Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing top 10 Kickstarters of the month. And before I jump in, I do have a Kickstarter of my own, Slice of Life issue 1 through 2, which collects our webtoon about an anime character that comes to life and falls in love with a high school cheerleader. So hopefully you guys could go check that out. I'm also a Kickstarter consultant, so if you need help with your Kickstarter from a PR angle, contact me and I will consult for your Kickstarter. Now, jumping into the list, I do have some honorable mentions just because I do not want to be biased, and these are friends that have Kickstarters. So starting with Nightwolf issue 6. So something that's really cool about this book, it's a werewolf story, which I really do enjoy, but also it's an ongoing book. A style that we don't get to see as often on Kickstarter. There's a lot of miniseries on Kickstarter or issue 1s, but to see a book go all the way to issue 6, I think is honestly success all on its own. But also this book has wonderful artwork, a coming-of-age werewolf story, so go check it out. Moving on to Frankenstein, the Unconquered, and with this book, it's done by Wells, who's written for us for By Visibility before. Absolute pleasure to work with. And one thing I love about his style of writing is just how he puts so many fun genres on its head. And with this one, we get to see Frankenstein come to life in a post-apocalyptic world and what exactly that looks like. So really just fun setting with a fun set of characters as well. Moving on to the last honorable mention, which is White Ash Deluxe Edition. So if you're not caught up on White Ash, one of the biggest titles on the comic section of Kickstarter, this is a great place to catch up. It's the Deluxe Edition. If you're interested in fantasy, this is a great book, but it's also grounded fantasy. That's something I've really enjoyed about it as someone who's not as big of a fantasy fan. This is really easy to get into, and it's really character-driven. Artwork is phenomenal for this book as well. And also, we have a crossover print with Slice of Life going on right now, so if you back up both Slice of Life and White Ash at a physical level, you will get the print done by Sorrow, which is just beautiful anime style artwork right there. Now, moving on to our top 10 list. So number 10 for me is Carmen, the graphic novel. This is based on the opera Carmen, and I just thought that was a interesting thing to have for a comic book. You know, we get to see movies adapted into comics or vice versa, comic books adapted into movies, but to see something that was brought from the stage, something like an opera, how do you portray that in a comic book where you can't hear it? I love that aspect, so I just thought that was a really cool concept for Kickstarter. Moving on to number 9, another book that has definitely been on Kickstarter for a while, which is Forest Folk, and this is collecting volumes 1 through 2. If you're interested in kind of Looney Tunes style artwork, or even honestly, I would say Scotty Young style artwork, more classic comic strips with fun animals, go check this out. The artwork is phenomenal for this book. Moving on to number 8, which is Ninecrow. This is a horror book, and it has to do with this family that comes into this town and sees something is up, something's going on, and it's, this eerie horror book, and I like the art style. I also believe this is a webtoon, so, obviously I love seeing webtoon, being brought into traditional comics and using a platform like Kickstarter to fund it and bring more people to their comic book. So that is number 8 for me. Moving on to number 7, which is Something Like Summer, and this is volume 3, so it's been going on for a while, and it's a BL. It's a boy love, gay comic book, and it's a romance, and that's something I love about Kickstarter, is that we do get a lot of queer romance books that you might not get to see in traditional comics or the direct market, and I'm a sucker for a good queer romance. Moving on to number 6, which is Ennead, the Rule of 9, and this is a trade paperback, so if you have not caught up with Ennead, this is a fantasy book, and I've had the pleasure to work with the creator before, and what I really enjoy about this book is just how much hard work that the creator has put into it, and building, a bigger mythology, and honestly, the artwork is really cool as well for this one, so a great collection to have. Moving on to number 5, which is YOOBIES, and this is a book about teenagers who don't have superpowers becoming heroes. And I thought that was a fun take on superheroes, and especially YA superheroes, which we see a lot of in independent comics and just in comics in general. So to put a nice spin on it, it's like, hey, how about if they were superheroes and they didn't have powers at all? I thought was a cool concept. And the artwork also kind of had this very classic look to it as well. Moving on to number 4, which is Demon Bitch. And if you are looking for a sadistic comedy, this is the one to have. It's very off the wall and just so different. You know, we have comedy books in comics every so often, and they're nothing like this. They're not as cruel as this book. So, you know, it's a very different take on comedy strips. Moving on to number 3, which is Boston Metaphysical Society. And if you're into steampunk, this is the book to get. This is also a collection. So if you have not caught up with Volume 1 or now Volume 2, this is a perfect place to pick it up with some amazing artwork. Again, another title that's become a staple of the comic side of Kickstarter. Moving on to number 2, which is Happy Hill, issue 1 through 3. And I am a sucker for a good horror book. And this put it in a setting I've never seen a horror story with, which is a beautiful vacation, secluded area. And it's, you know, most of the time you'll see a cabin in the woods or, a forest where you get to see, you know, a serial killer or a slasher type character come into the mix. So to see a secluded area in a luxurious place like a vacation, I thought was a really fun concept. Moving on to number 1, and that is Rubber Match, a boys' love-inspired pro wrestling comic book. We've definitely seen sides of wrestling that are queer, some queer storylines, a few queer storylines in the WWE, and I wish I was I had more knowledge about all of wrestling, but I'm sure the other sub-factions as well. But, it's not in the forefront of wrestling. So to see a storyline that is queer and make it a comic, I thought that was just such a cool sell. Especially because wrestling fans and comic fans definitely have a marriage to each other. There's a lot of people that enjoy comics and wrestling, especially just the type of storylines there are. So, I thought this was a great concept and good art and sucker for a romance book and seeing different genres mesh together. So that is my top 10 Kickstarters of the month. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one.